No, dear viewers, your eyes nor your ears are deceiving you this week, because nearly 7 years after I published my very first classic pay-per-view review, I've decided to go back in time and once again review WCW Superbrawl 2000, aka Superbrawl 10, from February 20th at the Cow Palace in Daly City, California. Once again, this was the very first classic show that I decided to look at. Don't ask me why, you should ask 2017 Brian for that logic there, but I know that from the first review to where I am now and how I review these classic shows, I mean, it's lacking in a lot of ways. You know, I didn't know how to rip from the network yet, I didn't know how to get that footage, so it was all just still images that I used, and certainly my knowledge and insight of this time period is better refreshed because I have gone to this year in WCW so often now, and besides just kind of George Lucasing it up and putting kind of a special edition spin on the Superbrawl 2000 review, you know, with better insight, better production values and whatnot, and actually correct grade graphics at the end. Another big reason I am relitigating Superbrawl 2000, so to speak, is because it's part of my greater mission in the year 2025 to finally finish the story, by which I mean the story of WCW in the year 2000. Because over the years, I have occasionally gone back to this year, I've gone out of order, it's very incomplete, so my goal throughout this year is to finally fill in the gaps, not just put a nice new coat of paint on the Superbrawl 2000 review, but also to finally look at the WCW 2000 shows I haven't looked at yet. So I've got Great American Bash, I've got Fall Brawl, and I have Mayhem to look through later this year, and then the collection will finally be complete. So you'll look for those shows kind of sprinkled throughout the rest of the year in the corresponding months they came out in, and I'm looking forward to finally kind of, again, filling those gaps and finally getting the complete story of what WCW is like in this year, because there is certainly a lot to cover, some things I didn't talk about in my original Superbrawl 2000 review that are definitely worth bringing up. So let's first of all go back to where we were after the sold-out pay-per-view. You know, Bret Hart got injured and was forced to relinquish the world title back in January. Vince Russo went home because he wanted to be the only creative voice in the room, and so it sold out. Chris Benoit wrestled Sid Vicious for the belt, and he won in a way that gave them an out in the event he ended up leaving, which he did, because shortly after this, in conversation, Mike Graham, who was a producer for WCW at the time, threatened to kill Chris Benoit for leaving. And so, to make things nice and clean, they said, okay, we'll give you your release, just don't sue us over that. So Chris Benoit, Dean Malenko, Eddie Guerrero, and Perry Saturn left the company en masse, and within 2 weeks they were with the WWF, became the Radicals. That's a whole other story, but right now WCW needs to try and pick up the pieces, because they're down Bret Hart, they're down Scott Hall due to injury, they've just lost 4 of their best, you know, upper mid-card guys, and so they are scrambling to try and fill these gaps, not to mention all the other, you know, injuries that certain wrestlers in the company are having at the time. So they've got a lot of ground to cover and try and just make things interesting again with WCW, and they are just having the hardest time right now, because even when they are trying to correct things, Commissioner Kevin Nash is injured outside the ring, and even more audibles have to be called. More on that later. But you know, Kevin Sullivan, Terry Taylor, and Ed Ferrara are kind of the ones in charge of creative right now in WCW, trying to right the ship after Vince Russo left. But don't worry, because Vince's influence is still very much present in this show, in WCW at the time, in terms of the storylines and who they're pushing and who they're not. And of course, this is all kind of a preamble before the big reboot in April, once Russo is brought back into the company, working with a returning Eric Bischoff. So it's very interesting to see kind of where the company is right now, as it's just desperately trying to cling on to any kind of life preserver as they're circling the drain here in 2000. Before we get into the show proper though, there are a couple of things going on just in WCW right now as a product that make me laugh, and I wanted to bring them up. One thing I noticed is that they're starting to put out these "don't try this at home" PSAs with Dustin Rhodes, but like, why only Dustin Rhodes? Because I'm pretty sure his are the only spots that come up when I'm watching these old shows, and like, there had to have been other wrestlers you would include in a PSA like this, right? Like literally anyone else besides Dustin Rhodes. Also, I'm not sure what I'm going to talk about this again, so it does need to be brought up because just in the middle of all this, apropos of nothing, Diamond Dallas Page has got a match on Thunder against a man known as The Machine. This is a match that gets no build beforehand. Nothing is known about The Machine or who he is or why he's in WCW, but he shows up there against DDP, has this big, elaborate, elongated entrance. They are really rolling out the red carpet for The Machine, who when you look at him is just a guy. He's just a big, tall, muscular guy in a mask, and he comes out with this vest and he gets all this pyro and all this pomp and circumstance, and then the match happens and it's like not a great match. Like, he's selling a lot for DDP, for someone who's being booked as this big, oh my god, this big deal. He immediately looks like a chump. And then of course the match is best known for this moment near the end where DDP, the guy's on the top rope getting ready to jump. DDP leans on the top rope and then you just hear the Machine go, he just does this big scream, jumps off deliberately, and crotches himself on the top rope, essentially, leading to DDP winning the match. And that's the last time you ever saw The Machine on television in WCW. The Machine was Emery Hale, who was a power plant guy. He also went on to become Hale in the XWF, managed by Jimmy Hart, but he didn't really have a very long career after this. He was just basically a big guy who had this shot. I don't know what the story of The Machine is. This whole thing seemed like a massive rib, the way they went ahead and presented him and gave him all this big fanfare, and then he's just this big dumb guy who can't wrestle. But anyway, let's get to Superbrawl 2000. Nearly 9,000 folks are in the Cow Palace here. Apparently 3,000 of them were comped. Pay-per-view buys had tanked massively from year to year. I had to cross-reference this with a couple of different websites to find out more about this, because apparently the previous year's Superbrawl in '99 was almost 500,000 pay-per-view buys, whereas Superbrawl 2000 only got 70,000, which is just an amazing drop-off. That is just unfathomable to me that the show could drop off that massively in numbers. And sure enough, one of the first lines you hear on commentary as the pyro's happening is Tony Schiavone yelling, "How do you get better than this?" Schiavone, Mark Madden, and Mike Tenay are on the call for this event. Madden has officially replaced Bobby Heenan on color commentary for the pay-per-views and Nitros. Heenan has been demoted to Thunder, which, God, the disrespect. I will say that Mark Madden is okay at this point. He's not fully obnoxious by this point. He's not gone totally horn dog and just being the most disgusting human being on commentary possible that makes even Jerry Lawler seem classy and refined in comparison. He's got some good wit. He's got some good moments and stuff on commentary. And the story is he basically was kind of called in last minute because Bobby Heenan didn't make a Nitro because he apparently had strep throat. And so Madden was just kind of brought in there, and then they liked him so much they kept him around. But man, just think about the wasted potential, the disrespect to the brain, because he is just, he's past it by this point. He does not give a shit. He has no passion. But even when Bobby Heenan has no passion, he is still really good at color commentary. Our opening segment sees Mean Gene Okerlund outside the office of Commissioner Kevin Nash. So just a quick little recap. At Sold Out, Kevin Nash beat Terry Funk to become the new commissioner, and he was representing the NWO, and oh my god, this new scourge of the NWO in power, it's going to be crazy. But as I mentioned earlier, Kevin Nash, he suffered an ankle injury outside the ring, and so he's written off from wrestling, but he is still going to be on TV from time to time at this point. So he was a heel when he started being commissioner, and then through this process from Sold Out to Superbrawl, he has become babyface because he is at war with his former teammate Jeff Jarrett, who is drunk with power, even though he was a heel, but now he's a face just because he's against Jarrett. But you don't see Nash on this show. Out come Jeff Jarrett, the Harris twins, and some ladies, including Medeja and Tylene Buck. Jarrett says he's El Kabonged Nash sight unseen, so he's back in charge. Oh, is that all it takes then? He says he has unbanned the Harrises from being at ringside in the main event. Ooh, those sneaky NWOites. highlights. They show these full screen graphics, which are definitely better than what we saw at Sold Out, but I just can't get over the fact that you have this triple threat match as your main event, and you can't be bothered to put 3 different boxes in there. You have to keep it at 2 just because everything else keeps it at 2 boxes. Come on, you can't make a special one. Also, when they're breaking down the Hogan versus Luger match, Mike Tenay has this line which made me laugh my ass off for like 3 minutes straight, where he goes, "Will it be Hulk Hogan, Hollywood Hogan, or some deadly combination of the two?" I'm laughing just saying it right now. And of course, let's not forget about Tafka Pie. And speaking of which, we go to our opening matchup. It's the Cruiserweight Tournament Finals as the artist formerly known as Prince Iaukea takes on Lash Leroux. Back at Sold Out, Oklahoma, Ed Ferrara doing his Jim Ross cosplay screwed Medusa out of the Cruiserweight Championship. He got sauced by the ladies. Then right afterward, he relinquished the belt and made a tournament. Well, if anyone's going to take the belt off Medusa, I guess it might as well be Ed Ferrara. Oklahoma at this point has also been announced as the new head of the WCW Women's Division, which, lol, that never goes anywhere. I don't think it goes anywhere beyond like 2 weeks. So we have this 8-man field over the last couple of weeks to determine who's going to be in the finals. Why is Evan Courageous' name in a different font here than everyone else? I think Tafka Pie is a pretty funny gimmick. I think it is one of the bright spots of Vince Russo's creative contribution to WCW during this time. You know, that's the kind of one of the things that Vince Russo is so well known for, is like giving people gimmicks and giving people things to do and making them seem important just by kind of slapping a new coat of paint on them. Sometimes it didn't work, but I think for Iaukea, it definitely worked here. It gave him a different dimension, a different character, and I think that was what he needed at that time. Plus, it doesn't hurt to have a great Jimmy Hartified version of Purple Rain as your theme. But I can't lie, back in 2000, I was definitely a Lash Leroux fan. I just thought he was so cool because he had the sideburns in the shape of the L. I mean, that was brilliant. Paisley, the former Nitro Girl Storm and the future Charmel, she's on the mic and welcomes the fans to the creative genius that is the artist. Lash Leroux smacking Paisley on the ass, which gets Prince's dander up. She gets a free kick in despite the bell having already rung. There's a lot of quick back and forth in the opening moments, and there's a lot of signs here that are kind of distracting at this point in the show. There's one on the hard cam that says, "Where's Benoit?" Dude, you know where he is, come on. Leroux hits a cross body to the outside. Tafka Pie hits a dragon screw to gain the advantage. Shivani is already tired of saying the artist's name.
And that has turned the tide in the favor of the artist formerly known as Prince Iaukea. Well, that's a lot to say.
That is a mouthful.
There's a sunset flip by Lash, and Tafka Pie grabs Charles Robinson by the dick to stay upright. Then he tries being sexy toward Lash. I guess it's some sort of a mind game thing. Like I said, I've corrected this before, but back in the original Superbrawl 2000 review, I erroneously said, oh, it's because Prince swung both ways. But no, that was just me being dumb, because Prince obviously was a very sexual being, but he was definitely into ladies. And so I think this is a weird kind of spin on the Prince gimmick to make him like, oh, he's just like Goldust, where he feels up on guys too. It's like, that just seems like a cheap way to get heat, and it's just like, that's not what Prince did. Paisley is standing on the apron for the longest time in this matchup. Finally, they set up for a Hurricane Rana off the top, but Paisley blocks it. Prince hits the jumping DDT to win and become the new champion. Hey, another nice thing about doing this review again is I get to update the 4-star system and do the 5-star rating system. I'm going to give this one 1.5 stars out of 5. The match was blisteringly quick, but I think that what they were able to fit in there was mostly fine. I think it's just funny that Paisley, I think, just jumped her cue by like 4 minutes. That's how long she was on the apron for. And, I thought at some point, if she was that early, they could have said, just get back down and do your thing. Nope, she just stayed up there the whole time, and it was really weird. And then at the end, you finally understand why she was up there, because she never did that. She was never just on the apron for any of his other matches. She just got confused, I think. It is a choice to kind of, again, go in this very opposite direction of what you're used to for the Cruiserweight division. I mean, this match had its moments, but it's not nearly the kind of whiz-bang, wow kind of stuff that you would normally see a pay-per-view open with the Cruiserweight division like before. Iaukea going all the way and winning the championship here, I think it was quite a choice. Again, I think the gimmick has legs, but I thought it was a bit presumptuous to have him win out among the other people in this bracket. But like I said, hey, we get a cool Purple Rain cover, or a Jimmy Hartified version, and we also get a short-lived custom Cruiserweight Championship belt, which looked nice. We see Norman Smiley getting taped up backstage. Elsewhere in the promo zone, we see Mean Gene with Brian Knobbs, the former Hardcore Champion. He says he was knocked off the top of the mountain by Bam Bam Bigelow thanks to a broken arm from Lex Luger. But his teacher, Fit Finlay, who he has also been fighting with a lot lately, taught him to never give up. Clearly an early inspiration to John Cena. Hey, who's behind that Keep Outdoor? We're going to ask that question a lot tonight. Up next for the Hardcore title, Bam Bam Bigelow defends against Brian Knobbs. Brian Knobbs is sporting that broken arm from Lex Luger's reign of arm-breaking terror. I mentioned this in the, I think either the sold out or the uncensored pay-per-view review, but there are a lot of guys with broken arms just littered throughout WCW thanks to Lex Luger. It's kind of weird. Early in the match, Finlay shows up with a broken arm of his own. The distraction allows Knobbs to attack with the trash can. The fight immediately spills over to the web zone and into the crowd. They fight into the concourse area, big slam into the condiment table. Finlay gets involved again, but Knobbs tells his mentor to let him do it on his own. Back to the ring we go. Knobbs producing a table from under the ring. He leans it against the corner and it instantly backfires.
Tony, you must have ESP.
Well, we've just seen it too many times.
Bam Bam hits greetings from Asbury Park, but he's not done. He goes up to the top rope. Who shows up again but Fit Finlay on the outside? Bam Bam hucks a chair at him. That allows Knobbs to take advantage again. He clanks him with the trash can lid. The cover and the win. Knobbs regains the title and is very happy, despite Finlay directly going against what he asked him to do and interfering. But yay, Knobbs is happy. I give it 1 star out of 5. You know, it goes without saying just how obvious WCW tried to copy what the WWF was doing with their hardcore division. Not saying that what the WWF was doing was like so much more amazing in that realm, because I think this is just kind of a product of the time wrestling is in, where weapons don't really mean anything and they're just kind of like there, like all those weapon attacks, no matter what it is, if it's a trash can or it's a table or a lead pipe or a whatever, it all seems to come out in the wash and doesn't mean anything at this point. And you know, they covered a lot of ground in the arena in a very short amount of time, and it was just like, we got to get all those, you know, hardcore tropes in, we got to hit this spot, we got to do this thing. And it just felt like a cheap parody of WCW's already cheap parody of the hardcore division in the WWF. And I thought Finlay popping up throughout was silly, and Brian's, you know, inconsistent motivations or his like demands on Finlay. Like, I still don't know what the hell's up with these two guys months later. Backstage, Ric Flair sings the praises of the total package and Elizabeth. Woo, you've never been more jacked. Woo, you've never been more lovely. Woo. We then see the security team outside Scott Hall and Sid Vicious's doors. Wow, they just knocked these out in like one take and called it good, huh?
Security has been here all evening, all day.
Nobody gets in. No one comes in or out of this room. I don't care who they are, even if it's the president. Got it?
Up next, a 3-on-1 handicap match as Norman Smiley takes on 3 Count. That's Shane Helms, Shannon Moore, and Evan Courageous. Lately, Smiley's been getting involved in 3 Count's business, interrupting their singing and dancing, and he's just crazy enough to fight all 3 of them, despite simultaneously being booked as a massive coward who shrieks at everything. Early on, Mike Tenay with a great joke that seems to get a genuine laugh out of Shivani.
Yeah, their fan club meets in a phone booth.
Courageous saying, no singing and dancing this time, it's all business. And as Norman Smiley makes his entrance, they show the replay of what happened to him on Thunder when the wall choke slammed him off the apron and through the table. And I love that they kept all the noises, so it's all slowed down, going
Up close and as the wall drove Norman Smiley directly through the table. He was stretchered.
Smiley gets the local pop wearing that Jerry Rice Niners jersey, and holy shit, the height Shannon Moore takes on this back body drop to the outside. Smiley is on fire at first, but the numbers are too much. Sugar Shane with a twisting swanton dive, but nobody in the pool. Ouch. It's really fun to see this like early version of 3 Count, because you know that by the end of the year, you'll know that they have pretty much held the Cruiserweight Cruiserweight division down this entire time in the company. We get a giant swing by Smiley, a little dance, and a double clothesline. Shannon Moore just enters the match without tagging, but gets caught in the Norman Conquest. Great name for a finisher. Shane Helms breaks it up. The taped ribs are now exposed. We get big splashes by Abbott and Shane. Shannon puts on the Lion Tamer, kinda. Norman taps, and 3 count wins. I'm gonna give it 1.5 stars out of 5. You know, it's a low rating, but I do have to give credit for some of the stuff we did see in this matchup. I mean, it's kind of hard to tell a story of a 3-on-1 and make it look like the one has any chance of overcoming it, but I think they did a good job just telling the story in an entertaining way. Again, I think that like Norman's, his chameleon-like ability to kind of work a good match out of anybody, combined with the reckless, nature of 3 count and just their daredevil style, I think it really works well here. Again, it's hard to tell this story and make it like, oh my god, very dramatic or engaging, but I think there was enough good stuff kind of peppered in there that kept my interest at least. There's that door again. Jeff Jarrett wants to know who's behind it, and then we go to our special main event match as the Demon Dale Torborg takes on The Wall. Think about what happened at the New Year's Eve 1999 after a live performance by Kiss on Nitro. It's meant to spawn this whole stable of Kiss-themed wrestlers, but WCW loses interest in it pretty quickly, and then by this point Eric Bischoff has gone from the company. He's the one who kind of negotiated this deal in the first place, so WCW really couldn't give 2 shits about the Demon at this point. They job him to hell and gone on television. It's pretty stunning to see like his entrances are longer than his matches on TV, and he is always losing. But one of the terms of the deal that Bischoff made with Kiss was that the Demon was contractually obligated to appear in a certain number of pay-per-view main event matches. So in the most carny workaround I have ever heard of to get around this, they said, oh, this random mid-card match is going to be a special main event. It's like giving the little sibling a birthday present because like the big brother's birthday party's happening and they don't want to feel left out. I love how Schiavone is marking out to this, by the way. He's telling the guys to shut up so God of Thunder can play. He also exposes the business a bit in this one, because during the Demon Dale Torborg's entrance, he spits out the blood, and Schiavone goes, when Gene Simmons does that, it's food coloring and Caro syrup and sometimes egg whites. Like, Tony, you killed the illusion, man. Like, work with us here. Even WWF would call it red viscous fluid. Meanwhile, The Wall's been getting a real big push in the last month, just laying out everyone, chokeslamming people hither and yon. Who do you think's going to go over in this one? The Wall doesn't actually come out at first. The Demon goes up the ramp to look for him, and The Wall jumps him from behind, and they brawl their way to the ring. That made no sense. Why'd they do that? There's a great moment here where you get boring chants, first of all. That's not great to hear. But also at one point there are simultaneous dueling Wall is awesome and Wall sucks chants going on. The Demon counters a whip and jumps out of the corner. Now he takes over for a bit, Wall catching him in midair and drops him into the ropes. The Wall goes up top, Demon beels him off and damn near drops him on his head. Holy shit, I almost screamed when I saw that. The Demon goes up top and there's a super choke slam and the win for the Wall. I give it 0.5 star out of 5. Man, you can just really tell WCW could not be bothered with the Demon Dale Torborg at this point. They clearly wanted to get something out of the Wall with this one. They're clearly seeing something in him, the way they're pushing him. And so this is just a match with no heat. It's to get the Wall over more than to get the Demon Dale Torborg over, certainly. Sometimes Hoss fights can be fun to watch and can be brilliant at times. This was not that. These two Hosses did not work well together on this one. Like the beginning was confusing. I'm not sure how that made the Demon look dumb as hell to go out there, well, I'm gonna just go there and look confused, and then gets hit from behind by the Wall, who's never really done that at this point in his run. And just that finish was so scary, that Beal where he just does not help the Wall get over at all and almost spikes him. MGO is backstage with Ernest the Cat Miller, and Gene wants to know, where's James Brown? The Cat insists that James Brown will be in the show tonight. Gene tells him, hey, the Maestro thinks that you should listen to classical music, like Mozart. Why are you stirring the shit, Gene? Cat says that Mozart stole from Little Richard, who stole from James Brown. Then Cat laughs and says, shut up, Mean Gene. That was pretty funny. Elsewhere, the Harris brothers bang on the private door, and then elsewhere, Tank Abbott paces. Big Al paces. Yeah! Are you ready for this? It's the Skins match, aka leather jacket on a pole, as Tank Abbott takes on Big Al. Who's Big Al, you might ask? Well, according to storyline, he apparently is Tank Abbott's former bodyguard when Tank was fighting in the UFC. But the broader answer to this question is, who gives a shit? Because they have done nothing to make you care about this guy. Like, he literally just shows up on TV to sit in the audience while Tank Abbott continues to knock people out. They are pushing the hell out of Abbott at this point too. Very similar to the Wall, where he's just mowing through guys, but Tank's thing here, he just hits you with one punch and knocks you unconscious. That's his whole thing. And so, a Big Al, again, former bodyguard, is just sourpussing Tank Abbott and just kind of burying him and stuff. It's just one of those things where it's like, why are people made to care about this? Like, Tank Abbott is getting a following, but like, who is this guy? We don't know or care enough about the history they have for us to care about this match or put it on a pay-per-view. It's mind-boggling to me that they thought, oh yes, this will be a good way to get Tank Abbott over and make him seem really, cool and badass and legitimate. There's a point, where they're asking like, hey, like, why is Big Al, crapping on Tank Abbott for getting in the world of wrestling, and then you yourself are getting into the world of wrestling? And he's like, oh, I'm just trying to prove something. Like, okay, I mean, you still seem like you're also selling out. By the way, they keep cutting to these headshots of Tank Abbott in the high package. They're so funny. They're so out of place. The match begins. First things first, Al takes his belt off and says, okay, we're going to do this belt thing. We're going to tie the belt around our wrists. Oh shit, I dropped it. Okay, now we're going to do this belt thing. Let's go. And they're just cursing at each other going, bring it, fucker, pussy. And they're just like punching each other's full bore in the face, in the jaw, in the cheek. It's just like they're really going for it here. These are not working punches. I will say that. It looks pretty snug. But again, the fans don't really know what to make of this. It's very quiet, and they'll kind of go, ooh, when they see some particularly brutal shots and everything. But for the most part, this crowd could not care. Al knocks Tank out. That's kind of rare. Now Al slowly turns Tank around, slowly exits the ring, slowly sets him up for ring post-itis, then he just stops. Now he just slowly climbs the ropes, then stops to stand on Tank's face. Then he poses. Tank finally wakes up and pushes Al off. He clocks Al with some heavy-ass punches. Get up, fuckface! It's interesting, by the way, that all these wrestlers that Tank has fought just go down with one punch, yet Big Al here is able to withstand so many strikes from Tank Abbott. Very interesting. Tank then puts Al on his shoulder. He goes to climb all the way to the top turnbuckle, but then he slips, falls over, then Al falls off his shoulders and down to the floor. Holy shit, this man could have died on pay-per-view. Tank goes down off the top to punch him one more time, then he climbs to the top and grabs the leather jacket. He's got a hard time putting it on. He throws it down and has produced a knife. He jumps down, brings the knife to Al's throat and says, I could fucking kill you right now. What in God's name is happening? They cut away from this. Fuck this match and everyone involved. -5 stars. Again, it's good that I'm reviewing this again with the more up-to-date star rating system. It's rare to see a match where every decision they could have made happened to be the wrong decision. Because, oh my God, this match was an absolute train wreck, literally from start to finish. I was in disbelief of just how atrocious this matchup is. However, I mean, it's very fascinating to watch as well. I will give it that. It's a very fun train wreck. So if you like that kind of thing, you owe it to yourself to watch this match at least once. And the best part about it is, and I don't know if Tony Schiavone was trying to ad-lib something to make it sound, less weird or awful, or this is what he saw, but he said that instead of a knife, he said it's a pair of scissors that he got, and he was trying to cut his goatee, but Al doesn't have enough hair on the goatee to cut with scissors, especially that big. Wow, that was That was crazy what Tank Abbott did here. MGO is backstage now with Harlem Heat 2000, Stevie Ray, Big T, aka Ahmed Johnson, and their lawyer Jay Biggs, the former Clarence Mason. Stevie says his little brother knows nothing about watching people's backs. That's why he's enlisted this guy they've known from day one. And the people who used to watch your back are watching somebody else's back now, so think about that when you're thinking about your back. And meanwhile, Booker T says this is for all the marbles, it's for the whole enchilada, and a whole bunch of other metaphors. He's got someone watching his back tonight, he says. And we go now to a match for the rights to the Harlem Heat IP as Booker takes on Big T. Stevie and his friends have really been putting the screws to Booker the last several weeks, you know. They took away his theme song, they took away his pyro, they took away the flames on his trunks, they even took away his letter T, and he is simply known as Booker, and they gave the T to Big T. So this is a fight, you know, for the rights to who gets to be representing Harlem Heat and that branding and whatnot. It is kind of reminiscent of when there was the DX battle for like the rights to the name DX in 1999 in the WWF. And I think that these kind of feuds are like funny on the surface, but they do kind of make sense because the idea is, you know, hey, these wrestlers are fighting for the money they're owed. You know, wrestling is a money-making enterprise, and these are technically prize fighters. So it's like, I understand why, you know, somebody's, you know, intellectual property or their branding would be very important to a wrestler. And of course, you know, you can kind of use that to justify this storyline, but this is not a great angle that's happening, that's being played out. Booker comes out to some Leave It to Beaver ass theme, and his entrance takes the whole song. I did love that part because the song is literally going like dun da 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 boom, and that's right then Booker's on the turnbuckle going yeah, like he waited for that very moment. I thought that was brilliant. Anyway, Ahmed Johnson's as big as a house at this point in WCW, and it really shows. The match begins and he overpowers Booker early, but Booker comes back with like an angle slam with no rotation, then he just like suplexes the big guy. Okay then. Booker fighting off both T and Stevie on the outside. Big T is just so immobile. Hey Billy Silverman, look over there for a sec. Clarence Mason with some cheap shots while the referee is distracted. Booker comes back with a Russian leg sweep, the axe kick, the side kick. Biggs gets in the ring this time and Booker just decks him. Booker goes back to Big T and hits the bookend. Now Stevie distracts. He goes back to Big T, missile drop kick. Booker has it won, but then the lights cut out. We hear a bell toll. We think it might be midnight, but instead it's this big guy, Big Swole. That distraction causes Big T to hit the Big T bomb to win. It's his first offensive move since the beginning. The big dude enters the ring and is introduced by Clarence Mason as the newest member of Harlem Heat, and he says the scales of justice, 300 pounds, 350 pounds, and now 400 pounds, are too great for the Booker man. I give it 0 stars out of 5. This match was horrible. Not Booker T's fault. I mean, I can't believe Ahmed Johnson took 2 years off of wrestling and this is what he came back looking like. This is crazy to me that WCW even took a chance on him at this point. And it's like Booker was fighting a barely sentient wall. And I don't mean that like the wall. I mean like a literal like brick wall, because Big T just like stood there and took gobs of offense and didn't do much else, certainly didn't like hit the ropes or anything, and he just like took moves and hit one move to Booker and that was it to win. Like, God, what a miserable match this was. You know, and again, I don't mind this storyline in theory, I just don't care for some of the actors in it. Mean Gene's backstage with the Maestro and Symphony, aka Ryan Shamrock. Gene says, you and the cat have been beefing. I mean, it makes sense. I mean, they're polar opposites. One guy likes classical music, the other one likes James Brown. These two will never get along, but secretly, I do smell a buddy cop film coming out from this. Maestro cuts a promo through his teeth and makes a wager saying that if Mr. James shows up, he'll listen to whatever wretched music Cat wants him to exclusively, but if Busta Brown won't show up, then Cat will become Stroh's lackey. Mwahaha! Elsewhere backstage, the security guy can't unlock the door. Oh, Harris boys, what are we gonna do now? Let's beat the guy up. Up next, the latest chapter in this babyface versus babyface mid-card rivalry. They're really pushing these guys as the future of WCW as Billy Kidman with Torrie Wilson takes on Vampiro. It's the third one-on-one match in their recent rivalry. They are 1-1, and this is the rubber match. The respectful rivalry has suddenly gotten contentious. They had each other's back. Now they don't. The hype package for this matchup goes into way more detail about it than necessary. There's some quick back and forth to start out. Kidman with a head scissors to Vamp outside the ring.
That's Vampiro, not Vamp.
Vampiro takes over, hits somewhat of a brainbuster on Kidman. Vampiro forgets the rule that you don't powerbomb Kidman, but you can drop kick him in the leg. Tori gets up on the apron and Kidman collides into her. Vampiro grabs a chair, but Tori distracts. You can hear a guy in the crowd yell, "Fuck her up!" Kidman drop kicks the chair into Vampiro's face. I think Vampiro is supposed to do a missile drop kick off the top, but Kidman is not in the right place, so it kind of looks like a double stomp to the back of his head. On commentary, Mark Madden says that he predicts that a year from now, these two will be fighting for the U.S. Championship, and in 2 years from now, for the World Championship. We can all dream, Mark. Kidman with a nice top rope Frankensteiner. Vampiro learns the second rule: you can powerbomb Kidman after the first attempt goes bad. Kidman off the top with a wild spinning reverse DDT that mostly lands. Shivani kind of undersells it, but Kidman wins. I give it 3 stars out of 5. It doesn't take much to get there, but this is the match of the night so far. I do appreciate that they gave these guys a decent platform. They gave them like a decent amount of time to wrestle and to work and to show what they could do, which is very much unlike some of the other matches you see on this show. And it's very clear how much they are portraying them and positioning them as, oh, these are the future stars you got to look for and invest in the company. And obviously, we know the company doesn't go long enough for that to ever know if it holds true or not. But I do like the fact they gave them that kind of platform and they kind of put that mantle on them. So it's nice that you kind of have something to root for and look forward to in the year 2000. It's just too bad that for both guys, really, things just go horribly awry. Mean Gene backstage with Terry Funk and Dustin Rhodes. Funk and Flair, they're going to fight in a death match tonight, and Funk talks about how his father was the king of the death match. "I'm going to kick your ass tonight, Flair, and this young man with the belt buckles on his shirt is going to be in my corner." Outside Sid's locker room, he tries to leave. The security gets pissed for some reason, and Sid yells, "Don't touch me ever!" He wants Mean Gene over here pronto. "Yes, sir, Mr. Vicious." Time now for the Sicilian stretcher match for the tag team titles as the Mamalukes take on David, Flair, and Crowbar, who are accompanied by Daphne. A few weeks ago, the Mamalukes beat Flair and Crowbar for the tag titles, and they've been beefing ever since. Also, a week or two ago on Nitro, Big Vito's sister's wedding reception was happening backstage at the arena, which is an odd place for a reception. Was the wedding ceremony there as well, or did they just get a good rate on the building because Big Vito was working there at the time, so they kind of like doubled up and got a bit of a discount? Like, why was the reception in the actual arena? Anyway, Flair, Daphne, and Crowbar crash it, so there's big hijinks there. They also beat the bejesus out of the champs with lead pipes one week, and once again, like, the brutality of it is totally just undersold and not given any gravity there. Also, that storyline that began in January where Disco Inferno was in this heavy debt to the mob, so he was kind of being forced against his will to manage the Mamalukes and everything, and he's trying to find ways out of it. Yeah, that's all gone now. Forget about it, because Tony Marinara is gone from the company. He's going to be Tony Mamaluke in ECW, and that whole mention of the family and the debt that he's owed, never mentioned again, so now he's just the manager of champions, the Mamalukes. Mean Gene's in the promo zone with Disco Inferno and the Lukes, and great opening line by Gene where he says, "I have no idea what this great sport has come to. You ain't kidding, man." Disco's been trying to talk his guys out of it, but the other boys are ready for the Sicilian stretcher match. Big Vito says that Father Carmine and the big man upstairs are cool with what's to come. Johnny the Bull just wants his cheese sandwich. What an odd running gag this was. Like, he managed to fit cheese sandwich into every promo during this time. So anyway, no pinfalls or submissions or DQs. Both members of the team need to be stretchered out of the arena for the other team to win. Disco Inferno joins commentary. He's not great. There's brawling from the get-go by all 4 guys. I like this dive to the outside by Crowbar when he changes direction onto Johnny on the stretcher. Daphne doing her screams all match. She gets in the ring for some reason, hits Johnny with a Hurricane Rana, and loses her wig. Disco comes in, Daphne sprays him with something, and then she just leaps out of the shot while she's screaming, and she's all done. What a sequence that was. That was incredible. She comes in, does a couple of spots, and just goes, "Blah!" screaming and just jumping, leaping out of the shot. I laughed my ass off at that. The challengers throw Vito into a stretcher propped up against some stairs. That didn't look fun. Disco somehow wanders back to the commentary table despite being blinded by Mace. Chekhov's table is set up in the corner. Crowbar is powerbombed into it. David gets double slammed into the mat as Disco just keeps asking, was that us? Was that good for us? Johnny the Bull with some great agility turns and hits a guillotine leg drop. That was sick. The Mamalukes not duct tape, they just masking tape David onto a stretcher. Then the referees wheel him out. Wait, why are they helping? Daphne rings the bell at one point for no reason. Bar is on the table. Big Vito takes all day to jump off the top rope and makes a big old splash onto him through the table. They tape him to the stretcher. Then they grab Daphne and tape her to a wheelchair. The tape is tearing. It's not holding anything. They got to sell for this tape. It looks absolutely stupid. They stuff a sock in Daphne's mouth and wheel her out as the crooked refs help Crowbar out and the Mamalukes win. I give it 1.5 stars out of 5. There were some fun moments in this match kind of sprinkled throughout. I think like Daphne's interjection in the match was pretty entertaining. And then, I think they do some impressive spots during this thing, but the match was a mess. And the stipulation is so silly. The fact that the tape isn't even like duct tape. It's just like the weakest looking tape possible. And the referee...
28 years ago. Seems like yesterday. Doesn't it, Maccabee? I watched a ridiculous-looking man in a ridiculous-looking singlet and a ridiculous mask best the legendary Iron Sheik for the Maccabea heavyweight title. I couldn't believe it. No one in that crowd could believe it. And I know, Maccabee, you couldn't believe it. Since that day, so much has transpired, Maccabee. I have wrestled for every major promotion on this planet. I have become a WCW hardcore tag team and Cruiserweight champion, and I have wrestled the likes of Terry Funk, John Cena, and the late, great Eddie Guerrero. And what have you done? You've crawled under a rock, and you've stayed there for 28 years. Mighty Maccabee, this is not a burlesque show, no. This is not a baggy pants farce. This is professional wrestling, and it is what I do. And March 2nd, Livingston High School, after I take that title from around your waist, I will take what's ever left of that beaten, battered body, and I will push, I will shove it right back underneath that rock that you've been living under for 28 years.
I've heard enough out of you, Crowbar. I've waited 28 long years for this opportunity. And I came from the promised land, and I promised all my fans out there that I would retain the World Maccabea Championship. Now, I know you're a hardcore icon, and I am not. But I wear the Star of David on my singlet. And I've worked on a move called the Star of David, which is patterned after Sergeant Slaughter's Cobra Clutch. And you'll be seeing the Star of David on Sunday, March 2nd at Livingston, New Jersey High School for the return of the Maccabee.
Back in the heel lair, Jeff Jarrett has a plan. Meanwhile, Mean Gene heads to Sid's locker room. Sid says surprises or no surprises, Jarrett and Hall will learn that he is the world champion. He didn't get there by mistake, he earned it and he belongs there. Jarrett's scheming and Hall's friends in high places won't stop him, and anyone who gets in his way, they'll be powerbombed straight to hell. Great promo by Sid here. Up next, Ernest the Cat Miller arrives at the arena. Now, for weeks, the Cat has been promising fans that, his good friend James Brown, Godfather of Soul himself, is going to be showing up on WCW programming, and every time he says it, it never happens, and he makes excuses, this and that. So finally, it's put up or shut up time, and they say James Brown will be here. And so that's the big intrigue. We saw the promo from Cat and from Maestro earlier in the show, all leading up to this. And even back then, I was just kind of befuddled by this. Like, James Brown is going to show up. And I'm like, to do what? Why? Like, I don't understand, like, how is this? And of course, I'm not the right target market for James Brown at, 13 or 15 years old, but I'm like, why should I care about this? It's like how I feel now in 2025 when guys like Kai Cenat and I Show Speed show up. So the Cat says that he and James Brown are going to dance tonight, his music hits again, and out comes Timu James Brown, or maybe Timu Silky Johnson, I don't know. The Maestro and Symphony show up, and what an injustice they don't play the Maestro's theme here, because when I was watching this show and researching it, it finally clicked for me, oh my god, the Maestro's theme is just a nice piano cover of Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff's music. The Stro has come to collect on the bet and tells Cat to go on and be his servant. Stro pulls off the wig, and what a shock, that is not James Brown. The Cat says, don't disrespect James like that. Stro says who? Then we hear off camera, says me. And now out come a bunch of dancing extras. Tony mutters, oh my, could it be? One more extra pops out, I think she missed her cue. Then after some more stalling, we see the real James Brown pop out. Man, I haven't been that nervous about someone taking a long time to make an entrance at the Cow Palace since that one show I worked in APW, and Rey Mysterio took like 3 minutes after his music played to pop out. It was awkward as hell. So James Brown is dressed like a grape and he comes out with this big posse. Who are all these people? We hear this pyro going off, and at times amazingly with the Maestro's facial reactions. I am dying at this. And he faints, by the way. This has actually produced the largest and loudest reaction from the crowd all show, so I guess it worked. The two of them have a dance off. The Cat does the thing where he's tired and Brown puts the robe on him and Cat jumps up again. And so this seems to be James Brown kind of handing and passing the baton of the Godfather of Soul to Ernest the Cat Miller. I will say this, in a bubble, in isolation, this is a funny segment. It's very entertaining. It's fun to see James Brown in this ring and doing some of his dances and the Cat dancing along with him. This absolutely is the jumping off point for the Cat becoming a babyface in WCW from here on out, because he made good on the promise and everything. Even if, this segment may not have, sold one single ticket or, convinced one other person to buy this show. So in that sense, I'm not sure it accomplished anything. It could not have been cheap to get James Brown for this. Oh, and by the way, the rumor is this was still a game time decision. Even up until the segment aired and happened, they weren't sure James Brown was actually going to show up. So at least this investment and promoting it kinda paid off. So even though it probably didn't draw a single extra person or draw a single extra buy, this is an entertaining segment. And I think we kind of look back at this, kind of say, oh, this is it's crap or whatever. And it doesn't help WCW's fortunes, and it's not like this helped drum up audience or anything, but just, again, in a bubble, this moment here with the Cat and the Maestro and everything, and the fake out of the fake James Brown and the real one showing up, it's a pretty good segment, I'm not gonna lie. Backstage, Gene is with Scott Hall outside his dressing room. Hall makes a joke about how he's been in timeout lately. He says when he broke into wrestling, it wasn't a popularity contest. You didn't have to get along with the Bizoys or the Bookers if you could go, and everyone knows that he can go. But didn't you get this title shot because you're friends with the Bizoys and you're friends with the commissioner, Kevin Nash? We get a hype package for the Funk and Flair matchup. It ends on a Ric Flair promo. Then we go live to a Ric Flair Flair promo. They did this with Stevie Ray last month too. Flair says he's lived, bled, and survived through it all. He owns San Francisco, he owns Terry Funk, and he says he doesn't like fighting in death matches, he doesn't like the dirty stuff, but he'll do what he has to do to kick Funk's ass. Then we get this hilarious shot of the disembodied heads of the commentary team in this low-angle announce table shot before the camera moves up. They explain the traditional deathmatch rules. After a pinfall or submission, the wrestler has till the count of 10 to get back up. WCW Collector's Bear, get your WCW Collector's Bear here. Up next is WCW's attempt to rekindle the magic from 1989, a Texas death match as the Nature Boy Ric Flair takes on Terry Funk. After losing the commissionership to Kevin Nash, Funk had suggested that maybe Ric Flair could come back and join in the fight against the NWO, but Flair comes out and is like, no, he and Funk are still at it. Then on Nitro one week, Commissioner Jeff Jarrett put David Flair in an I Quit match with Funk. Funk takes a lot of gnarly looking dingers from David, but then just beats the brakes off him, and Rick doesn't even show up to try and save his son. Arn Anderson was so upset by that he's backing out. He's got no horse left in the race. He's not on anyone's side for this one. So I guess that means the old age outlaws are no more, right? I will say though, it's been great to see Funk bust out the classics in these promos. You banana-nosed, horse-toothed son of a jackass. The matchup begins early on. Terry takes a chop and goes, motherfuckers. Funk lights up Flair with the jabs. They go to the outside and we get a couple of big old suplexes on the floor. Man, Flair is turning extra hard onto his shoulder with these bumps. Funk gets the first fall, so we have the 10 count begin, but Rick gets up fairly quickly. I tell you what, nobody sells quite like Terry Funk. Flair takes Funk to Dick Kick City, then begins to focus on the leg. Funk taps out pretty quick to the figure 4, but he is able to recover. Hits 2 pile drivers onto Flair on the floor, one of them with the padding off. We get another pinfall for Funk, but Flair gets up. We get a callback to New York Knockout when Funk grabs the live mic and says, I'm gonna break your neck again, Rick. They go up on the table. I'm amazed it holds up long enough, and Funk pile drives Flair through it, but Funk pulls Flair's arm up before the 3 count. He produces another table from beneath the ring. He goes up to the top rope, but Flair is back up and pulls him down, drives him through the table, pins him for the 3. Both men are barely able to pull themselves up as the count's happening. Flair somehow manages to stand up in time before the 10, and Flair wins. Oh, that was kind of underwhelming. I give it 3 stars out of 5. You know, it's not 89 anymore at this point, but chemistry is chemistry, and regardless of their age or where we are in the timeline, I think Flair and Funk do have a lot of magic and a lot of chemistry together here, and this match is no exception. I do think that the ending, the final thing that caused Funk to go down was way less impactful than the piledriver Flair took earlier. And also I thought it was interesting that Dustin Rhodes was, at ringside for this entire match, but really plays no part in the match itself. And, I kind of forgot when Dustin eventually turns on Funk leading into their match at Uncensored, but it's not this show, and this feels like it would have been a good opportunity to do it. Who's behind the fucking door? No time to answer that now. Mean Gene is with the Hulkster, accompanied by Jimmy Hart. Jimmy's arm is broken, Hulk's arm is broken. How can he go on? Hogan says this is just the break he's been looking for. He wants Jimmy Hart to witness the revenge. The folks in the Cow Palace are gonna hear Luger's arm snack, crackle, and pop, dude. So up next, it's a grudge match as Hulk Hogan returns to pay-per-view to battle the Total Package, who's accompanied by Elizabeth. Lex Luger is still crowing about how he put Sting out of action late last year, breaking his arm with the steel chair. That was, of course, so Sting could go off and film Shutter Speed, which would air on TNT. And so, Luger very briefly is dressed like Sting in the aftermath and kind of making fun of Sting. He's not doing that anymore, but he is fully embracing the arm breaking thing. He's got the chair he carries around with him like a trophy. He's got the scorpion on one side of it to show off, and he's just breaking everybody's arms and whatnot. At one of his promos, he says that his career is bigger and more successful than Hulk Hogan's ever was, which, even if you don't like Hulk Hogan, that is demonstrably not true. But that does bring Hogan back onto TV. And then on Thunder, no less, we have an exchange between them where Hogan calls Luger out for a matchup. And then we see Luger bring in Jimmy Hart into the equation. He breaks Jimmy's arm. Then on the Go Home Nitro, Lex beans Hogan right in the head with a baseball bat, then breaks his arm with a chair. I don't know, man. I think in terms of shock and what the impact would be, I think hitting someone in the brains with a baseball bat is worse. Michael Buffer with the introductions. Hogan has the early advantage, fighting a little dirty here. Okay, fighting a lot dirty here. Maybe this is his Hollywood persona coming out. Luger fights back and really has Hogan on the ropes. Hulk blocks a punch with the cast for the first time and uses it for a clothesline. I do love how in professional wrestling, a broken arm in a cast is both a weak spot and an additional weapon that you can use that doesn't hurt when you actually use it in the offensive form. Liz hits Hogan from behind with the bat, but Jimmy Hart takes it away from her. Hogan taking a suplex, but he hems up. We get the punches, the boot, the posing. Then Jimmy Hart throws in the weight belt, but Luger capitalizes and goes back on Hogan. Jimmy then decks Luger from behind with his indestructible arm cast. The leg drop. Hogan wins. Wow, what a babyface. Then afterward, he uses the weight belt like the Yapapai Indian strap match brother until Ric Flair shows up and they together jump Hogan. The Unholy Alliance beat the hell out of Hogan and Hart until Sting finally returns and bats Luger. Why are Sting and Hogan shaking hands after everything they've been through? Sting turned heel on him the previous year. Halloween Havoc? Starrcade 97? Anyone? I give it 1.5 stars out of 5. It's Hogan and Luger at their most immobile, so I'm not sure what else to expect from this, but I do think that, the crowd was definitely into it. They did tell a pretty good story, even if the stuff with the casts I think is kind of ridiculous, and like Jimmy Hart being like the game changer at the end to help Hogan win makes Hogan look like a total putz. I couldn't believe that he went through and agreed to that finish, but yeah, sets up more stuff for, Luger and Flair being a team. Again, Sting coming back and helping Hogan and being all hunky-dory and shaking hands, barely making eye contact with each other. What was that? After the hype package for the world title match, we see the keep out door is open and no one's in there now. Boy, I can't wait to see this resolution. In your main event for the WCW Championship, Sid Vicious defends against Jeff Jarrett and Scott Hall. This has been a very confusing way to get here. So like I said, Bret Hart relinquished the championship due to injury. Benoit and Sid happened at Sold Out. Benoit wins, leaves the company. And so then the next week on Nitro, they have Kevin Nash versus Sid for the vacant belt. Sid wins it, and then later that week, Kevin Nash strips Sid of the belt. They fight for it again on Thunder, and Sid wins that matchup again. Now, at this point, Kevin Nash injures his ankle. He injures it, I guess, stepping out of a car and slipping on the ice outside. So he needs ankle surgery. He's now, the top heel is now out of action for a while. So in storyline, Jeff Jarrett assumes the role of the acting commissioner and immediately goes drunk with power. He makes himself the #1 contender against Sid. Meanwhile, Scott Hall has come back at this point from his injury / whatever, and Jarrett puts him in the firing line against Sid 1 week on Nitro. Hall is definitely not into that, and then more tension between the NWO 2000 takes place. Finally, Nash comes back, quote, live via satellite, and he says that Jeff has no power anymore and adds Scott to the world title match. But even at this point, Scott is in a bad way in real life. He's still fighting those personal demons, as they say. There was an overseas tour shortly before this pay-per-view where apparently he was not in the best shape to compete or even be out in public. He missed a Thunder taping in the build to this. There was supposed to be a major angle with him and Jeff Jarrett, and so they had to change plans for that. So whatever opportunities they are giving Hall at this point, it's just another one of those cases of him kind of squandering them because of the stuff that's going on in his personal life affecting his work. And even that notwithstanding, what a rushed and disjointed storyline that this has become. This is your major storyline right now. The NWO 2000 was supposed to form in December with this big, oh my God, it's the worst, darkest timeline because the NWO is back and Bret Hart's at the helm. And then he gets hurt, and then Kevin Nash gets hurt, and Scott Hall is not in the best shape to compete, and Jeff Jarrett is a massively, massively annoying character. And it's just, this is not fun to watch. This, when you consider the amount of hype that the NWO 2000 came in with and where they are only 2 months later, it's mind-boggling that this is kind of the shambles of what it was like, and now this end result is just, again, very confusing. It's very shit, and especially when you compare even like the worst of the original NWO at its shittiest, like cannot compare to what the NWO 2000 is like right now. So Scott Hall and Jeff Jarrett make their entrances. They start fighting before Sid even makes his way to the ring. Sid gets in there and he cleans house for a moment, even hits the Harris brothers. Ron and Don, though, they attack Sid. They crotch him on the ring post. That allows Jarrett and Hall to work each other for a while. Schiavone calling them kids before referee Silverman takes a ref bump. Wow, haven't seen that lately. Sid hits a double chokeslam, but it's not enough. Jarrett nailing Sid with a title belt, which is totally legal in this match. Then he hits the stroke on Nick Patrick. The Patrick flop. Chair play backfires on the baddies, and Scott Hall almost wins it. The outsider's edge is blocked, and wow, another referee bump. Mickey J goes down as well. Then out comes crooked referee Slick Johnson. Suddenly Hall hits the outsider's edge. There's the cover, the 2 count, but Johnson stops because, oh, he's hurt himself. The fans are not digging this. Jarrett grabs the guitar and he El Kabongs Hall, but wait, here comes Roddy Piper in a referee shirt. He's the one behind that keep out door. He stops Slick Johnson from counting and drops him. Piper with the eye poke. Jarrett walks into a chokeslam. Sid powerbombing Hall. Piper makes the count, and Sid retains the title as the show goes off the air. I give this main event match 2 stars out of 5. Now, first of all, poor Scott Hall cannot catch a break because he apparently hurts his back pretty badly in this matchup, so he's going to be out of action once again after having just come back from an injury so soon before this. And, you know, even though when I was watching this stuff at the time in 2000, I wasn't aware of the online scuttlebutt, so I wasn't not at all knowledgeable of like whatever the backstage story was with Scott Hall during this time, but as a fan, I thought it was really cool that they inserted him into the matchup because, hey, Scott Hall's one of those guys that never had a world championship before. I don't think he really had that many matches at all for the title in WCW. So it's like, hey, you know, it could happen. And watching this match back, they did a good job with a couple of fake outs that make you think, oh, maybe Scott Hall could win this one. Obviously, it doesn't happen, and it's probably a good thing they didn't like put their eggs into that basket. But yeah, this was just a big overbooked mess. Sometimes, very rarely, that amount of overbooking and referee bumps and run-ins and what to do, all that stuff, sometimes it works and pays off and can make fans happy, but I don't know if that was the case here. Like, their guy won. Sid, the babyface, won, and he held back the challenge of the NWO and all that stuff, but I think it was just like, yeah, just kind of a rough match because of all that fuckery happening at the end. It's such a trademark thing, especially with Jarrett matches in WCW, where you have just like, you know, ref bump after ref bump, weapon shot after weapon shot, and all these things going on. And, you know, this is just more of the same. It was just a decent, mildly decent main event match. Not the worst thing we see on this show, not by a long shot, but it is also not the best. That being said, my final revised grade for WCW Superbrawl 2000, and I'm going to use the right letter grade in the graphic this time, damn it, is a D. This show is somehow far worse than I remember it being. And I thought that with the passage of time and maybe my appreciation for certain people and things had improved in the last 7 years, that maybe I would look back at this more fondly. No, so much of this ages way worse than it did in 2017. So it's hard to enjoy this unless you love train wrecks, because there are a good number of them on this show that I guess if you like that sort of thing, there is some replayability on this event for sure. It's just it's really crazy to think that, you know, WWE is about to have one of their best creative years in their history of all time. And meanwhile, WCW is just circling the drain, and everything they try here, for better or for worse, just does not help them. And it's sad. It's sad to see just how far things have fallen, and it becomes an issue of depth. And when you lose that many stars to injuries and walkouts and releases and all that stuff, and this is what you're left with, like, man, you could see they're trying. I mean, maybe I don't know if they're trying that hard, but an attempt is made, and, you know, what they have here to fill the blanks, it's not all there yet, and there's just some really, really questionable things on this show. Sometimes you could point to the bookers for it, sometimes you point to the wrestlers for it, but yeah, giving this a second look did not make it go down any smoother for me. But what did you think of Superbrawl 2000, and how about this revised review? Let me hear it in the comment section below, and I cannot wait to finally finish the book on WCW 2000 this year and complete those last remaining pay-per-views that I've yet to touch. Be sure to give the video a thumbs up if you like it, subscribe to the channel, hit that bell icon for all the notifications. Next time here on the Classic Review, well, can you feel it, folks? Because we are on the precipice of WrestleMania season, and I figured it was only appropriate to tackle a few more Classic Manias over the next several weeks, one of which, I will say this, in all the WrestleManias I've watched, there are actually a couple of them before 10 that I've never seen all the way through. I don't know how I've made it this long as a fan without doing that, but I am going to knock one of those off my list in 2 weeks and review WrestleMania 7. But until then, I'm Brian Zane, and I'll see you next time.